December 1st, 1955. On that day, Rosa Parks boarded a bus and took a seat. A few stops later, she was told to give her seat to a white passenger who had just boarded. She refused. For those who insist that a moment be pinpointed when the American Revolution of '63 began, that moment will serve.
When Rosa Parks decided to stay seated in December of 1955, I was 2.5 years old. I know that what Rosa Parks did made a huge difference in my life. The conventional wisdom about her is, oh, this was just a woman who got on the bus, she was tired, her feet hurt, she didn't want to get up. But that does not take into account her incredibly amazing political consciousness.
She was part of a community of women activists at local colleges who were organizing to take on segregated buses.
Rosa Parks sat down on the bus and began what we know today as American Civil Rights Movement.
Rosa Parks actually galvanized a people for change.
Rosa Parks had the discipline and the consciousness and the awareness to be able to be the person to represent African Americans who were trying to make a difference.
And when Rosa Parks makes her stand, she became an icon for change.
It's something that started with the spark from this woman that grew into a local bus boycott, that grew into a national consciousness. It made most Americans who care about liberty and justice realize that this way of life had to end.
Rosa Parks and the bus boycott. To be honest, I was in two minds whether to even do one on this, because you all did very well on it in your mock exam, and also I think you really understood it when I taught you this in year 9. But this is simply for anybody who's feeling a little bit nervous the night before the exam and just wants to double check a couple of things about this. Firstly, don't just tell the whole story. You need some of the story, but you also need to talk about the significance of the bus boycott and what was achieved by it. So, Rosa Parks was a 42-year-old lady who lived in Montgomery, Alabama. She just happened to live in exactly the same place as Martin Luther King. And this was pure chance, and this was the reason why the civil rights movement started. She was a seamstress in a major department store there, and every day she went into work, she saw lots of racism. She saw things like poor black children having to draw around the feet because they weren't allowed to use the machines to have them measured. She saw people having to wait at the back of the queues because they were black. And to be honest, it was just that she got totally sick and tired of what she was seeing in everyday America. So on the 1st of December 1955, she decided to take a stand, or rather sit down, to make a point. So what she did is, on the way home from work, she was sitting in the coloured section of the bus. There was nothing wrong with this, she was in the correct area. However, there was a law in America that if you were a black person sitting in the coloured section and every other seat was full, you should give up your seat for a white person. A bit like people are meant to give up the seat for a disabled person when they come on the bus and things like that. So that's what was meant to happen. But she refused. She refused, and then she was asked to move by the bus driver, and she refused again. The next thing that happened, which obviously was significant, was the bus driver got off and he rang the police, and they came on and tried to move her. Again, she refused. So Rosa Parks was arrested. Now, 4 days later, she had to turn up at court and she was fined. But why this is really important was the NAACP really took to a case, and they tried to make an advancement for coloured people through Rosa Parks. And luckily, a local preacher called Martin Luther King took it upon himself at the Baptist church to talk to people about what Rosa Parks had done. Originally, there was going to be a one-day boycott of the buses just to prove that the white people couldn't push them around. That boycott then lasted a whole year, from December 1955 to December 1956. Now, in the meantime, as we know, the white authorities did everything they could to force them back on those buses. So, the black people had to start carpooling, which is basically the shared lifts to work or put the money together to buy a big station wagon so more people could be taken to work that way. Because usually the black people had obviously gone on the buses for the simple reason that they were the ones who were poor, so they would need to ride the bus rather than actually have a car of their own. The white authorities did everything they could to try and avoid this from working. Sometimes people were arrested for speeding, like Martin Luther King, because obviously he had other people in the car he was taking to work. Some black folk got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to walk to work to ensure that they didn't have to ride the bus to make a point. And when some people were waiting for lifts in the carpoolings, what happened was they were arrested for loitering, even though they were just waiting for a lift. They stayed strong though, and what that meant was that the bus companies were going to go bankrupt. So it was decided by the Supreme Court that in December 1956 that segregation on the buses would be made illegal. And why this is absolutely huge is not only was it the birth of the civil rights movement, it actually showed that you could get lasting change, but by a peaceful way. And this is what then gave them the idea to continue on with peaceful protests for over the next 10 years.